reason usually.
Yep. And now we're live, and I'm going to start this, folks. Whilst what I've done is I've made this unlisted so that all my subscribers don't get notified, because some of them might be annoyed if they're here for the typology. Anyway, so over to you, Jeff, for the.
We usually talk about typology even in these videos. So.
Yeah, I know, but I just get the impression that most of the subscribers are not here for these videos. It's like a different audience.
I mean, you're probably right, because you don't usually list them that way. But anyway.
Yeah. Because, I don't want to give people like a chance to unsubscribe, basically, if they see a video that they're not expecting.
I mean, that's just silly.
Yeah, I know, but it's like we've been doing a lot of reviews, or rather, we've been doing a decent amount of reviews. And, we're just wittering away now, folks, but we're going to get through this. But anyone watching this should be interested in, like, we've been doing these reviews and not been doing many typology videos. And so if people keep getting notifications and it's like, oh, another review, when's he going to do a typology video? That sort of thing. So I thought if I made it unlisted, and then I have the option of selecting a box that doesn't notify subscribers. And then when I make it public, the people who are interested in Man and Machine and Kappa 2 can find it in a YouTube search, but it won't notify the subscribers. So you sort of get the upside without the downside.
Right.
Right then. So
the downside would be, but that's okay. I don't have to.
Yeah. So Jeff, your summary of this episode, please.
Okay. Well, as usual, there's not much of a summary, but this is Man and Machine, episode 6, entitled "Man's Fate," written by Robert De Laurentiis. I still don't know how to say his name, and Dick Wolf, and Glenn Davis, and directed by James Quinn. And originally aired June 16th, 1992 on NBC. And the plot summary, it says, Man moves in with Eve after a psychotic bomber destroys his home, seeking the person who arrested him. And not just arrested him, but actually put him away. He ended up in a mental institution for 8 years. And before I forget, at the very end, you may or may not have a screenshot of it. They have a little message on the screen saying that the episode is dedicated to our colleague, Michael Wagner. He was one of the writing staff and supervising producer of the show. And I looked up a little bit about him, and we actually had talked before, you may not remember it, but about another late 80s show called Probe, which was co-created by Isaac Asimov and was another sci-fi thing. In fact, I actually compared the relationship between Bobby and Eve a little bit to the dynamic that was on that show. And that was before I even knew they had a writer in common, because Wagner was one of the people who worked on that show.
What important question. Was there a hot chick in Probe?
I think I probably answered that question for you at the time, also saying I don't know whether you would think so, but you're welcome to look her up. I can tell you what her name is if you want to look her up.
Yeah, what's her name?
Let me hit the thing here. Ashley Crowe.
Right. And how many episodes were there of it? Because we've only got 9 of this.
Yeah, it was around the same. Probably like 7 episodes, yeah. So a little bit less. Had a 2-hour pilot and then 6-hour-long episodes. Parker Stevenson was the main male cast member, played the professor guy. Then Ashley Crowe was his secretary.
Oh, so you think there was a similarity between that and this?
Yeah, in reverse, as far as the male was the the one that was the genius scientist NTP type character, and the female was the SP instinctual, physical, do all the physical stuff character.
Bit like the Fourth Doctor and Leela.
Yeah, kind of like that. Except I think the Fourth Doctor had a little bit more charisma, maybe.
Yeah, a bit more ENFP in him. Because I agree with you about Tom Baker. Like in real life, maybe ENFP preferences.
I think you were the one that said that.
Oh,
I was just agreeing with you.
okay, fair enough.
But yeah, anyway, so in this episode, well, anyway, I'll let Ben say what he thinks about it before I go into much detail.
Okay.
But as far as the plot goes, the psycho bomber guy, he records videos from different locations and sends them to Bobby because he's got this vendetta against him. We have this character, which was like the psychiatrist that so supposedly approved him for being released back into society, and she has a philosophy that the people are good, but they just have chemical imbalances that cause them to do bad things, and yeah. Well, I'm just trying to finish the plot stuff real quick. So basically, they have to, he does the psycho guy sets up all of these bomb situations. He destroys Bobby's house, so Bobby has to move in with Eve. He blows up things in the various buildings, including a thing that they have this eventual confrontation on top of a building where Eve has to parachute out of a helicopter in order to help him. But that's kind of ends up being kind of anticlimactic. And there's stuff about dreams and stuff about her suggesting that they have sex in order to get him to sleep, and just anyway, a bunch of stuff like that. So go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I was just saying that character, the psychiatrist, I just thought it was not realistic that somebody would be that extreme and that sort of out of the loop. That sort of like not in touch with reality and the practicalities of, and it's sort of more of like a plot device in that her whole position was unreasonable. I couldn't think that you would have, say now, a psychiatrist who would be that just that out of touch with reality, that stubborn, and so in my opinion, that strained credibility.
Well, one thing that I think this show has established is they sort of have this view of the future being somewhat more compartmentalized, which I think part of that is is realistic, and that you have more and more people that sort of are stringent and feeling like you have to sort of belong to one group or another instead of having nuance to your positions. So in that sense, they've sort of established that a lot of the guest characters tend to be that way in terms of they have these very black and white philosophies about everything. They're not as nuanced, whereas the main characters are portrayed as actually being able to to deal with a little bit more nuance. Even the character that's a machine, because she's able to sort of learn things and present that perspective. But I'm not sure whether or not I think because honestly, the scene where after he tied her up, I thought at first they were kind of going to go with, well, she had this abstract viewpoint, but once she was had to deal with the actual guy doing something to her, they were going to have it, well, she's sort of traumatized into changing her position. So I'm not sure actually whether I respect them more for her not changing after that or not. It's hard for me to say, but I would say
Yeah,
with the context of this universe that they've set up, I don't think her character is entirely unrealistic because they've created this idea that there's a lot of people sort of operating that way. So
yeah. It's just that I would have preferred, like, I mean, maybe you could have a start out in like the first scene as this sort of arrogant, inflexible character, but then, like, even if she's only in 2 or 3 scenes, have her grow through those 3 scenes where maybe there's this bit of thing where maybe in the final scene where you can sort of see that she acknowledges his point of view, but she's still sticking to, like, so it's not like a total transformation, but maybe a little bit of there of just but without spending too much time on her, because like we want to spend more time with Eve and Bobby. And what I liked about this episode, it really, I'm like the first half of of this stuff with the like with him, like again, I watched it late at night and wasn't that into it, but I did enjoy the stuff between Bobby and Eve. I have other points. So, and I'll let you jump.
I'll let you finish yours, and then I'll talk about my view.
Right, okay. So some of these might stimulate something new. I put here. Why does she need to exercise? Answer: so she can be in tight outfits. I put something there about Eve doing that thing. Like, he's going to have even a harder time getting asleep because he's going to have a boner thinking about what he's being offered. And it's like, damn it, Eve. Anyway, then there was a bit right at the beginning where Eve, for the first time, sort of noticeably to me, went a little bit tactically dumb. She did something when it was this, and she's there with the bomb, and it's like 15 seconds to go. He shouldn't have to tell her we've got to leave the house before it blows up. You know, so that bit I thought was a little bit. I know that she was sort of processing it as it was going along, but he shouldn't have had to tell her to leave. So that's the first time she's done something that was a little bit unsound in terms of the brains department, because
because even if she was confident that she would survive the explosion, she still should be instinctually protecting him from it.
Yeah, and she's done that before.
Right.
Yeah, you know, where someone's at the window and she jumped on him. I think that was in the first episode.
Mm-hmm.
Where so. Yeah,
so there is, but hey, you could just say that it's her reaction time was a little off that time,
Yeah, I mean,
there was a little bit of panic.
Yeah, maybe. Yep, and she was maybe pondering the implications and going into strategy when it was like time for some tactics, time for some. So she had an NTP moment of not being in there. Oh, and I like the bit where Eve went ISFJ, and I loved it when she said the word tummy. And like he picked her up on that tummy, and then she said, "Oh, she suggested that I be maternal." So I like that.
That was the one of the two parts that I actually laughed out loud was that. I forgot the next line. She says something like "be a good boy" and do something.
Yeah.
So that I actually laughed at, and there was one thing later. There was one line later I laughed at. Now I can't remember what it was.
Oh, was it? He was from planet Pluto, or so he claimed. I voted for extradition. Was it that?
No, it was later, because that was pretty early on. But
yep.
I don't know.
Something like he was judged insane because they didn't have a stronger word. I think that was early on as well. By the time I wrote down those two, I was stuck for space.
You were what?
stuck for space.
Oh. Yeah. Do you have more notes you wanted to say?
Oh yeah. There was a bit with the criminal would have gotten a lot better if he didn't take the mask off for the benefit of the audience, like when he had the latex mask on.
Oh, maybe it was hot.
Yeah, maybe like he got an allergic reaction to the latex. Bobby's did that bit there. Judged insane. I like the subplot more than the main plot, although the main plot improved towards the end. It was a little bit. My enjoyment was a little bit reduced by the lower picture quality, especially when I want to watch Yancy Butler in a higher quality. And it's like because I'm watching it on this screen, and so I'm only about 2 feet away from the screen, and so it's there are times where I wanted a better picture. Then we get there as he acted a bit. The bomb explodes. Shouldn't really tell. Did that bit. Yeah, there was the first time they missed a beat. Well, or like they did the thing later on when he had the spit take, where she suggested intercourse. But when she first suggested it, we didn't get a reaction shot from him. It should have been when she first said, but it wasn't something like that. It wasn't so much intercourse. It was something more in the area of innuendo. Oh, I'm going to get the chance to sleep with you. But like we didn't cut to his reaction. And I thought that was a mistake, because if a hot chick said that to you, Jeff, I would have liked to see in your face at that moment to see your reaction.
I thought they did show his face, but maybe not.
Because that's why I brought it up. I thought, hey, we should see his face here, because
he definitely showed it afterwards. It just may not have been exactly right after that, but because he had the scene where he kind of like sighs to the camera about it or whatever.
Yeah. It wasn't so much. It was early on, and it was just. Something like, I get to sleep with you. I just thought he might have reacted to the innuendo, and then later on it became blatant with the intercourse. I just thought there would be a reaction to sleep with. Now the actor did a bit of a reaction where he sort of turned to the side. But I just thought that from a direction point of view, and also part of it was because maybe that would have been good enough at the time if someone's watching it in better picture quality. But for me, in the present picture quality, I needed more of a close-up for his reaction. And other than that, I thought the direction of the episode was pretty darn good. There was some
what?
Well, not so much that, but just the close-up there of
cartoon overreaction with the eyes popping out.
No, not quite that, but it's like, if a hot chick said to you, I got a chance to sleep with you, Jeff. You just might have a little reaction there. All right. So that's pretty much it on my board. The board is being wiped clean.
Well, I would say this was so far the least enjoyable episode of this show. And part of it was probably that the psycho guy just wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
The acting wasn't bad. It's just the character just didn't have much to him. It's just sort of like, oh, I'm the crazy guy who laughs and does these things. Like, even those aspects of it, it seemed like if he was some sort of, if he was this technical genius that could use technologies, because he sort of hinted at him being able to do this, but it just, I don't know, I just had a hard time buying it. It seemed like instead of focusing on that he had abilities to, escape capture because of those sorts of abilities. They focused too much on him just being the supervillain that laughs and
yep.
melodramatic aspects, and the psychiatrist, kind of like what you said. It wasn't that I thought she was unrealistic. She just wasn't interesting.
Yeah, and like
It's like a series of sort of kind of meh scenes.
yeah,
And when you have something set up to be this dramatic confrontation, then you need to have it be more of that. And instead, we got this ending where Eve parachutes in, kind of kicks
Yeah.
it a little bit, and then it's like, okay, we're done with that. And so it seemed like it was very disjointed. It was like a lot of scenes sort of strewn together, but not very cohesive, in my opinion.
So maybe what they could have done is I would have focused a little bit more on her, but changed her characterization. And maybe what I would have done is I put a little bit of subtext in there in terms of in the first scene, I would have put some subtext in there that she knows she's messed up, but she's not going to admit it. And she's just saying all of this stuff as like flannel. But really she realizes that she's messed up and she's just trying to like shift blame onto others. And then gradually, then you can sort of see her reveal the truth of that she, because you know how people like covering themselves once they've made a mistake.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've always say that I like it when people have different perspectives and different agendas. But the problem was that they made it too much from the beginning that this dude is the evil, crazy guy.
Yeah.
And there was no nuance to that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like it's very much, it became sort of stock characters. Like you could have interchanged anybody into those roles.
He's like the Joker.
And so, honestly, there was no suspense to anything. And if there had been more of a reveal, like, you know, he does these little things to get attention, and Mann doesn't know who it is at first, and it takes a while for him to figure out who it is, and then there's sort of like this actual scene where he has the revelation of who's been doing this stuff, then maybe that would have had more impact. Or maybe the psychiatrist could have, there could have been either a separate thread going where she was concerned about this guy, or he really did escape in some way, but she was in on it. Like, you know, he bribed her in some way or something, you know, just something that would kind of change up the dynamic. Like in the episode that we had that involved the water and the wine guy. And like, you know, there was these different elements to it where there was at least some suspense and you weren't sure exactly who was working for who and why. Like, so even if the ending was a little bit of a letdown, there was at least some stuff along the way. It was more of a roller coaster, whereas this was just sort of like we're kind of plodding along until the inevitable conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, she could have been, like I said, she could have been in on it, but maybe she could have been blackmailed by that guy, and it would have enabled the actress to layer in some subtext that she's hiding something. And it added a bit more complexity to it, as you said, like those previous episodes that were quite involved in terms of plot. You had to sort of pay attention to the little details, especially in the first half of the plots. I mean, they were able to sort of unknot it towards the end, but there were some plots.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like the realism issues to me are more that this guy would be able to get away with some things. Like it's like even in early 90s, surveillance techniques were seemingly good enough that he wouldn't be able to do as much and get away with it. And especially we're supposed to swallow this as some future time.
Yeah.
You think where the way the kind of universe they've established, you figure there's cameras everywhere at this point.
That's the thing. I mean, that's most of the things you can say in science fiction, where most of these plots would be stopped by if they just had more closed circuit television cameras watching stuff.
If they had focused, if they'd spent less time on having Bobby and Eve sex dreams and more time on establishing this guy actually being good enough to work the technology and get around these things, if they'd shown more of that, kind of a little bit more of the Mission Impossible direction, you know, establish this guy. Well, you know, in my favorite Blake 7 episode, the guy that's shows that he's competent in order to get away from the people that were chasing him.
Yeah, it begins. I think his name begins with P.
Yeah, I forgot what it is too, but Provine maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. So they spend a great deal of time establishing his competence and ability, and you can understand, so it's believable how he was able to sort of lead this one man crusade where he's been able to elude capture and kind of operate his own operation. Whereas with this guy in Man and Machine, it kind of stretches the credibility where you don't really see those aspects, so you're just expected to swallow he's been able to do this somehow.
Yeah.
Because you would think even with him being approved for release, and not being an escape situation,
that's ridiculous.
There would still be some people watching him very carefully. Like the whole thing that they're saying, well, Bobby wasn't notified. I think beyond just him being notified, this guy has other victims and he has other, notoriety. He's not just some guy who could be under the radar completely. And it's just a one-man vendetta with Bobby Mann, and there's no other elements to it.
Yeah,
I want to put him away, but he had to do things to be, being prosecuted in the first place. You don't think that there would have been independent people that would have been after him?
Maybe there was an agenda from the writers about, maybe they wanted to do something about they're not in favor of having people released because they're supposedly cured. Maybe they thought.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely. If I was somebody of the mental health profession, I definitely might have taken this as kind of an insult, or at least that their view of the future was very narrow when it comes to that area.
That's sort of what I mean by that. The way they did the psychiatrist, where I sort of think that the way they wrote her character is not sort of fair to the psychiatric profession. And it's like, because she seems so, and like I said, we could have done something with her if we were script doctors on this. It's like, right, we've got to do something with her. We've got to establish more credibility and abilities with this guy. Maybe let's layer in a little bit of plot about why he was released early. Maybe there was a little bit of shenanigans going on in terms of, like, he was able to get some blackmail on the doctor that allowed him to be released, and she knew, and then she was trying to cover that up. You know what I mean? It's like, and that layers in, adds more plot, and it gives them more to act. Just something like that. A little bit of collusion between her and him.
Yeah. One of the things I've said about some previous episodes was that they were well paced and they used their time wisely. This episode, I think, did not do that nearly as well. So they focused on too many of the wrong things for too long.
Yeah. Do you think the action,
some of that's done marketing wise, because they're trying to show the scenes, the sexual tension scenes. They're trying to get ratings from that. I understand, and it's not that I'm opposed to them ever doing that. It's just, when you kind of shoehorn it into this episode with all the other stuff going on, it seemed like that entire scene was almost misplaced. Like it doesn't fit with the rest of what's going on.
What they could have had, they never had a conversation between, because she had that, they could have had a conversation between the mad guy and her, an opportunity for growth in her, where she comes, like, that would have helped. Like, just a little bit of dialogue between the two of them, whereas she's like a plot device.
Yeah, they both were, really.
And the same with the guy. Like, there's nothing added to them, and maybe there was maybe the action at the end was, maybe that should have been spread out a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they tried to do too much. Whereas if they had made it from the beginning that, say he's getting like messages, but he doesn't have the video where he sees the guy, like he had still been in disguise if he's going to do videos, or he was leaving him messages some other way and he's trying to figure out who is it that's gotten out that's trying to do stuff to him. There'd been some mystery to that. And then they had the one confrontation on top of the tower. those things, you could have streamlined it in a way and made it much more suspenseful and interesting instead of having it be this, we're going to have this continuing sort of series of mediocre scenes as opposed to building it and then having one really big scene.
Yeah, and with that character, the insane guy, do you think they were going for some kind of like Joker kind of villain or something, or just
I don't know.
typical mad guy?
Yeah, I think even a couple of their like loony villains they've had in the past episodes were better. Like the body part harvesting guy, he was more effective.
Yeah. Yes, it was more believable. So yeah, script doctor recommendations. Improve the psychiatrist. Would you keep all the stuff with Eve and Bobby? I think I would.
Well, I think I already addressed that. I think they spent too much time on that when it didn't really fit with the rest of the stuff in the episode. So I think it was kind of an awkward combination.
Yeah.
They might have been able to do that if they had spent more of the rest of the episode on there being more mysterious aspects as opposed to knowing right off that this is the guy they've got to deal with. And then they've got all these scenes that detract from that. It's like, yeah, I know they have to sleep, but still you would think that in those kind of circumstances that the focus would have been different. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a sort of principle of if you can remove a scene and it doesn't affect the story, it being cut, maybe the scene shouldn't be in there. So it's like a machine where every part should have a use.
Yeah, even the ending was kind of lame, like the whole discussion of her dream or whatever. Like I wasn't sure where that was supposed to be going. Like it didn't really.
Yeah.
At first I was thinking, is this going to be like something where it's a setup to a joke and the other cops are listening and she really didn't have the dream. She's just she's learned to like play a practical joke because she knows that he's worried about this. So it's sort of her attempt to be more human and having like a joke moment on him. Because otherwise I didn't get the point.
So Jeff, from a production point of view, when somebody's writing a mid-season replacement, do they have more time to work on the episodes? So basically, the amount of time that the writers would have, say, for a 20-episode season, would they have had that amount of time to spend on these first 9 episodes? Because what I'm sort of saying is, you can expect the odd clunker when you're doing like 26 episodes. But this was only 9. So did they have the same amount of time as they would have for a full season?
I don't know what the schedule was for any of that. Yeah. So.
Because you know what I mean? You'd think that if they had the amount, they had 20 episodes worth of time, but to do 9 episodes, each episode should be beautiful.
At least at that time, as I understand it, most of the time shows would start development around the same time. So it would usually be near the beginning of a year because the idea was they're trying to get picked up for the following season that would start in the fall. And so they would produce pilots usually like in the early part of the year.
Right.
And then whoever in the network was in charge of viewing those would usually be sometime in like the spring of the year because they would determine what shows were going to make their fall schedule. But because they always made those announcements in like May. And then as soon as the fall schedule was determined, then they would go back and look at which ones did we reject for the fall, but would we possibly consider as mid-season deals. And then it would go from there. So usually the pilots were already done. And then the ones that they would decide they wanted to put into production for mid-season, they would start around that same time. So it would probably usually be during the summer.
Do you think that these writers could have been working on other series, and so they didn't have?
Well, I'm sure some of them were. Obviously, Dick Wolf was heavily involved in Law and Order.
Right.
So, and I don't know about everybody else involved in the show, but usually people
Yeah,
are
because I think that especially with the mid-season replacements, that the writers are probably working on something else.
Right, because nobody knew whether it was going to
Yeah.
be picked up or when, or and
Yeah.
so everyone's always looking to make sure they've got a backup or some other thing in case this doesn't work out. So, including the actors, they probably were entertaining other offers too because they didn't know whether this was going to be successful or not.
Yeah, I mean, like this scene with the food, like that could have been cut out. You still got much of the plot. I mean, to me, those scenes were fine. It's just that by comparison with the main plot, I enjoyed those more and I think we've had better Bobby Mann scenes than in this one. And it's like they sort of repeated the beat multiple times around the intercourse thing. And you could have compressed that even like 2 or 3 times down. So, yeah, I think part of the solution to this is get some kind of relationship going on between the doctor, between the psychiatrist and the inmate, and get more of a complex relationship going on there in terms of like collusion and blackmail, and give more scenes with the psychiatrist, a little bit of subtext that she's like hiding stuff and like passing blame onto others, that she realizes that she might have made a mistake here, but she's got her professional pride in a way, and sort of like, and what her professional position is in like all this.
Could have even had her basically controlling him, that like
Yeah.
she released him as sort of an experiment. She's trying different drugs or different chemical things on him to see what reaction he does, because she's so detached from the actual like human effects of what is going on that she's almost living as if she's in the abstract, and the whole thing is just a big experiment for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Right, so so it didn't help. I think I'm going to review the actual video that I saw rather than what I mean is this like bad crummy picture that sort of inhibited my enjoyment of it, and so for that reason I'm going to knock a point off, and for other reasons as well, and watching it late at night, and so I'm going to give my rating as I experienced it at the time. I remember during like when I was about like half an hour through it, it was really dragging. I was like, oh, I've got to get through this. So I'm going to give it 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I drifted a couple of times too, and I'll also give it a 6. Like I said, I think it's so far the least enjoyable episode. There was one other one. I can't remember if there was another one I gave a 6. There might have been. I don't remember, but whichever one that was, this one was right on the borderline of where I almost lost interest. And if I had just come across this not knowing what it was, I probably wouldn't have stayed on it. So it's another one of those where it's just that I have seen the show do better, so I would still stay with it to see how they would do it. So it wasn't terrible, but it's just they've established their own standard as being better than this. So it was mediocre as far as their abilities are concerned.
Yeah, I mean, some of the camera direction was competent, and there were some good shots in there, some nice sort of like pull outs, zoom outs. I couldn't quite tell whether we were a tracking pull out or a zoom out.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems specifically with the way it was directed, as far as I know, but it was really just more. I think the script was weak,
Yeah,
so there's so much you can do with it.
yeah, and the characters got to improve him, got to improve the psychiatrist.
Yeah, they just I can accept things that are not necessarily some genius level thing. It doesn't have to be that for me, but they need to make them interesting, and they just weren't that interesting.
Also, another issue might be: do you think they wrote Bobby in the right way in this episode? Because he was in shock a lot of the time, and
Everybody was a little off, it seemed like, which, again, that in itself is not entirely unrealistic. I mean, you have obviously, especially the times when he wasn't getting enough sleep, you could
yeah,
see
yeah,
that part of it. I don't really have a problem with. In fact, I liked the fact that in the confrontation that on the top there, that he's portrayed as, even before he got shot with a tranquilizer or whatever, like he wasn't completely on his game,
yeah,
which that part I'm fine with. Like it's better to have that happen sometimes than to have him like he's always Mr. James Bond and just
yeah,
always slick on everything. Like it's good to show him have some flaws.
yeah. I mean, he is an older guy. Uh, he's getting on a little bit, like us. He's not in the prime of youth.
I think he's supposed to be in his 30s, if I remember right. But
Well, I was just sort of looking at the actor. I mean, the actor looked like he was over 40 at the time.
I don't think so. But let me
Well,
go
late 30s, anywhere sort of either side of 40.
go to the
But
internet and double check. But
yeah,
I'm
let's
pretty
see.
sure we looked that up in the first episode how old he was, and now I don't remember. But
Let's have a look. David Andrews, I believe it is.
yeah, so he's 68 now. So he was little about 37 then.
Oh, right. Oh, we're in it. It says 1952. If it's that guy,
Right.
1952, so he would have been 40 in 92.
And 37, that's what I just said.
Yeah, sorry.
Or actually 38, 39. So yeah,
Right.
not quite 40, but almost.
Yeah, because November 2nd, 1952. Don't most cops, aren't they retired? Don't they do like 20 years and then they're retired? Which is why it was weird with Stuart Garty in Homicide: Life on the Street. Why was he still a police officer?
I've seen plenty of cops that were around longer than that, but of course they don't all become cops right out of high school or anything. So
Right.
and
I think
especially not detectives. Usually the unrealism is the other direction, and you see detectives that are too young because most of the time, from what I've heard, even the most like sort of accelerated track to being detective, it takes like at least 4 years of being a patrol officer after the person graduates from police academy.
Right.
So the average detective, when they first become a detective, is already over 30.
Oh yeah.
And
So what I was
anyone that's experienced, that's considered a veteran, they're going to have like 5 to 10 years at least. So that's going to be somebody who is, late 30s to early 40s probably.
So I remember Stuart Garty, and I thought for a long time that his name was Gardy. But I remember him saying when he first appeared as a police officer, he said something like, "I'm 54 or 55 or something." But isn't it the case that most police officers are like on uniform is like they're already like they do 20 years and they're retired, or maybe that's a recent development.
As I said the first time you asked, I don't think that's necessarily true. No.
Okay, well, maybe it's a recent thing and it
It's
depends
like a lot
on
of
the.
other jobs. I mean, there's people that hang on much longer than others. There's people that are looking for the earliest they can possibly retire. And then there's people that just like to work, or they like, whatever aspects they stay on. There's probably quite a few that they may not be as quote unquote on the street as much, but they still sit at a desk and do paperwork for years.
Yeah.
So
Maybe it depends on the union. Maybe it depends on the city. Maybe
right,
in DC and New York City, the police are able to like negotiate these deals.
but yeah, I mean, we had cops that would come to talk at our school, and the joke with kids was they would call them the donut cops because they usually were overweight and usually older, and so it was like, well, this is what they do. They sit in the donut shop and then they go and talk to school kids and things like that. They're not, they don't, they're not the ones that are called when there's like going to be an action scene on the street.
So who called them the donut cops?
Teenagers,
All right, gotcha. Right then, so we both give this 6 out of 10.
Yep.
Right. I think I'll end the broadcast.
All right.
Now,
well, next week we're doing Kapitu, right?
Yes, I think so. Let's have a look. Yes, because you get it synced up with the
because there was a 1 week break where they didn't have Man and Machine. So join us next week for Kapitu and the next Man and Machine in 2 weeks, which I don't have in front of me, so I don't know the name.
Yeah, I think it's 4th. Oh, are we doing it on the 4th of July? Sunday, the 4th of July?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah, that would be episode 7.
Well, we'll see.
Right, we'll see.
But because I can't ever pull anything up when I'm trying too fast enough. But
right, so
I was trying to look up the episode title. Okay, it's called Truth or Consequences. Yeah. So
right.
that'll be a machine.
Right. Oh yes, and I said a few weeks ago, or maybe like this was the one where that was the spoiler that I came across accidentally on Wikipedia about Bobby Mann's apartment, about his house being blown up. And so that was it. So yeah. So 6 out of 10 from both of us, and I'm going to end the broadcast.